All right, let's talk Seattle Seahawks. This is a team that's made a flurry of moves this offseason, but we're starting to see some of the details trickle out, right? When the headlines happen, everyone's, of course, focused on this player was traded here, this player was signed there, but we're starting to see the contract details leak out. And that's where you really find out what teams are making smart moves and what teams are maybe being a little too risky in ways they shouldn't. Based on some new reports that have come out over the past few days, the Seahawks strategy looks even smarter. We'll get into that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, we all know the Seattle Seahawks moved off of a couple of their big name players, Geno Smith and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett as well this offseason, trying to retool their roster. But they also made some new additions. We all know Sam Darnold's in Seattle, along with Cooper Kupp, and they shelled out a decent amount of money for those two players. But the contract details for both of these guys have been recently revealed that I think really sell a lot. Let's go ahead and pull this up. This is courtesy of Spot Track. It's a great website, a great follow on X. Highly recommend it. Phenomenal source. Them and overthecap.com are absolutely perfect. But you can see here, it's got Cooper Kupp's contract details and it's got Sam Darnold's contract details on the screen there. And basically, starting with Cooper Kupp, you can see he's got all the numbers there, but focus on that fourth bullet from the top. 1 year, $17.5 million practical. So all the headlines, 3 year, $45 million deals, this much guaranteed, yada, yada, yada. Essentially, Cooper Kupp is a 1 year deal for the Seattle Seahawks perspective. You look at Sam Darnold, again, very similar. You got this big number, big headlines, all this guaranteed. In reality, it's a 2 year, $65 million deal in all practicality. So what the Seahawks did here is they essentially traded away Metcalf and Geno Smith to get some draft capital to free up some cap space. And then they brought in two guys to be basically bridge players. And this is why it's really important. And we talked about this about a month ago about the Seattle Seahawks roster construction. Let's go into our chart here, talking about cap texture of the Seattle Seahawks. Basically, this is saying is where the Seahawks are ranked in terms of percentage of their salary cap allocated to different categories: elite, high, middle, low, and rookie. We talked about this a little while ago. The Seahawks have a higher percentage and more people on rookie deals than any other team in the NFL. And the good news is for Seattle, they got some really good players on those rookie contracts. Both sides of the football line of scrimmage, they're absolutely stacked. You know, anyone from Murphy, obviously to JSN, right? They're stacked everywhere across the board. They've got a lot of great young players that they're going to have to shell out dollars for to keep that infrastructure in place when they find their future franchise quarterback. So what they did with this Cooper Kupp deal and the Sam Darnold deal here is they made this big headline move, but in reality, they followed the exact same strategy they've been using this entire offseason. Have dollars available to secure this infrastructure. Bring in Darnold and Kupp to keep some wins coming, to not have the wheels completely fall off, but do it in such a way that next year Cooper Kupp's gone. You can use some of that money to then start dealing with these young players. And the year after that, Darnold's gone. Use some of that money again to deal with the rest of these young players. Keep that infrastructure in place, and either next offseason or the following offseason, get your future franchise quarterback. And now you have a great infrastructure. Everyone's locked down on team-friendly deals, and you've got a young quarterback, and you're ready to just explode, right? This has been the Seahawks strategy. This has been John Schneider's strategy since day one of this offseason, and he's done a phenomenal job executing on it. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this, but Seattle Seahawks fans, you guys first in the comment section below. Obviously, we know the Seahawks are really doing a good job with their strategy here, but what's one area, one position group you think they should focus on more, right? You think they need to put more resources behind it? Maybe it's O-line, maybe they want maybe more linebacking depth, whatever it may be. Give us the one position group you think the Seattle Seahawks should really address more this offseason and put it in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on all things Seattle Seahawks, especially the latest with these new details?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is really smart. And I kind of want to put in perspective for everybody. I'm sure Seahawks fans know, and I'm sure we know, but until you hear it, it's kind of, you don't, just understand the gravity of how many young rookie contracts this Seattle Seahawks team. And I'm going to go through the list here. You have safety Kobe Bryant, linebacker Tyrese Knight, cornerback Tariq Woolen, Devon Witherspoon, and Josh Joby as well. You have D lineman Byron Murphy. You have edge Boya Mafe. You have tackle Charles Cross. You have tackle Abraham Lucas. You have guard Anthony Bradford. You have center Olu Watime. You have running back Kenneth Walker. And you have wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba. That is 13 players, if I counted correctly, out of 22 starters. These are starters. These aren't guys that are on depth players. These aren't second string guys. These are guys that are starting currently on the Seattle Seahawks 22. So 13 out of 22 players are on rookie deals. That is incredible. I think that just shows Seattle has done a really great job dealing with all of their very young players. But that's one thing I wanted to talk about first is just the perspective of when you hear Seattle has first in the league with their young rookie deals. That's how many guys are on this team. It's quite incredible. I think they've done a great job here. So when you start to see these deals come into place, I think these are even more critical than people realize because you hear 13 players, but that's also 13 players that have yet to be paid. Seattle has to address these contracts going forward, and having deals like this allow you the flexibility to do so. Seattle can go into the draft and kind of backfill, try to hope to get their next Cooper Cup. Now he's on a 1 year deal. If it works out, you might, extend and, restructure and do whatever you need to do to keep him on the squad. But if not, you can backfill that position with a rookie if you feel like somebody can replace him. Go forward on that and not have a huge, dead money hit from having to move on. Him, same thing with Sam Darnold over the next 2 years. If you can get your quarterback of the future that you feel like on this roster, you backfill that position as well. And you just set yourself up for success with having these deals. And if you're able to stagger these contracts going forward, you're going to be able to do it because going through all those guys, there's a lot of guys that are different like progressions of their career. Some guys like Devon Witherspoon heading into their 3rd year. Some guys like Tyrese Knight and Byron Murphy, they're going into their 2nd year. Some other guys like Cross and Lucas are going into their 4th year. So they're different stages, and people are going to tier out as when they need to get paid. So I think Seattle just doing this with their contracts just shows this team is next level thinking. This team is laying everything out, road mapping out when do people get paid, when do people not get paid, how can we structure these new deals and really do things like that. And people say, okay, NFL teams, they probably do that all the time. No, it's actually quite uncommon. You look at like teams like New Orleans Saints, they're like perpetually under like negative $100 million, like behind the cap. Teams don't really navigate the salary cap that well and think about their players going forward, and you have to make hard cuts because of it. So I think this is a great move by Seattle to allow them to keep their good players going forward. It shows just by structuring these deals in the way that they have. That is something they want to do. They want to be able to keep their good up and coming young players, and they're not going to drown out their potential to be on this team by overpaying someone and not navigating their contract going forward, which would inhibit them from being able to sign these young players.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand that we have all of those young guys that you draft and develop that are really quality players on both sides of the football, all levels of the field, right? From the trenches to skill players. It means you're really darn good at evaluating talent and drafting, at least better than most of the National Football League. And if that's what you're really good about, then focus on that. So it makes sense to acquire more draft capital, right? The great author James Collins, he famously said that the most successful organizations find the one or two things they can be better than their entire competition at and laser like focus on that. Other NFL teams, and basically almost every other NFL team, what they do is they try to be good at everything. All right, we want to really be good at drafting and really good at trades and free agency and player development. But the problem is that's not how it works. If you spread out your resources across all those domains, you'll probably be mediocre in all those domains, to be totally honest. The Seattle Seahawks under John Schneider have become incredibly good over the past few years at evaluating and drafting talent and developing it as well. So they should continue to focus on that. How you do that? By acquiring more draft picks, which they obviously did through the moves this offseason, and making sure they have the capital available to lock down those star players. Because if you're really good at drafting and developing, and you let 13 of them leave, right? It's if you have to pay DK Metcalf a lot of money and you have to let 5 other guys leave because of it, that doesn't work with your strategy. So John Schneider recognizes they're phenomenal at drafting. They're taking that approach and staying with that, attacking that on all cylinders, which is 100% the right move to make. And I think it's also important to understand it's a way to be successful in the NFL too. We saw the Philadelphia Eagles essentially win a Super Bowl last year with a solid quarterback, but an incredible infrastructure around it. And as much as, of course, there's a lot of people that hate Nick Sirianni as the head coach, I don't think he's terrible, but no one looks at Sirianni as a top 10 strategist or anything like that in all of the NFL. He's a quality coach. He's a good coach. Won a Super Bowl, right? He's been to another. Nothing against him at all. Jalen Hurts, same thing, good quality quarterback. But no one looks at them and say, oh, that's Brady Belichick 2.0, or that's even, heck, that's even Sirianni's not even on Pete Carroll's level, right? For example, I don't even know if Jalen Hurts was on peak Russell Wilson's level, of course. But now the NFL pattern has emerged where you don't need that level of coach quarterback play necessarily if your infrastructure is so darn good. And the Seattle Seahawks have a lot of the pieces in place to build that infrastructure. Another good draft or two will put them over the edge. And then it's all about finding a good quarterback. You don't need great. Remember, Jalen Hurts isn't great. Jalen Hurts isn't even on Patrick Mahomes' level, and he absolutely spanked him in the Super Bowl. If you have the infrastructure in place and the system in place in terms of having all the right pieces, then you don't need greatness at quarterback. You just need good. Right now, Schneider's building that infrastructure out. He structured the Cup and the Darnold deals so that way in a year or two, they can move off of them and have their next about a bucket of money ready to again lock down that infrastructure and then go after their good quarterback to take him to the promised land. This is just a phenomenal approach, a superb approach by the Seattle Seahawks. Again, it's not something that's new. The Eagles have done it, but very few NFL teams are going with this route. Most teams just seem to go spray and pray. Well, we hope our quarterback's going to magically become an all-pro, and we'll do what we can to fill around him. Hoping is not a it's not a recipe for success. Having a good plan is, and John Schneider and the Seattle Seahawks front office has a good plan, and they're executing on it. And because of it, the future is very bright in Seattle.